There's definitely some. Whoops. Welcome to Setup, you guys. Welcome to my channel. My name is Natasha. We're in the resurrection. Today we are in the resurrection. And I'm just processing today. I'm just processing because I'm looking at these disciples and it's just setting to me an example. Like I'm not making the mistake I used to make when I was a kid and when I was a teenager and when I first started walking with the Lord as an adult and thinking these disciples, how could they miss it so much? And the children of Israel in the wilderness, after God delivered them from Egypt with all those miracles, how now that they're under a new trial, how could they miss it so much? If that was me, after seeing him part the Red Sea, after seeing even, all the firstborns of the Egyptians just drop dead, there's just no way I would behave the way that they behave. I wouldn't ask Aaron to make a golden calf for me to worship after seeing God's power. After walking with Jesus and seeing all the miracles that he did, I'd be expecting him to be resurrected. Doesn't matter what he looked like on the cross. Doesn't matter what was happening. I'd be able to believe him to the end. I used to think like Peter, where Peter said, even if everybody leaves you, I talked about this at the live, when Jesus said, today all of y'all are gonna scatter and desert me. And Peter was like, even if everybody else scatters and deserts you, I will never desert you. I'm gonna stay with you till the end. I even die for you. You know what I'm saying? I am sitting here with a healthy dose of respect for how utterly ridiculous and off the wall this whole thing seems. To my logical mind of, if there was no religion presented to me and I just had to function based on the way I reason and my experience with the supernatural on a day-to-day. And I'm not even going to say supernatural. I'm going to say my experience with the spirit realm on an average day. How much more real everything my senses are telling me, and how much more logical and practical. Everything I hear people using their own wisdom and knowledge and the science and the things that we've uncovered to make sense of our world. When I sit here and I think about how much easier it would be to say that that's reality, it's not hard for me to understand where the disciples were at this point. And I've been saying this for the last few lives. It is so hard to get past our senses. It's just so hard. That's all carnality is. That's all carnality is. And honestly, for me, that's my biggest battle. Renewing my mind to understand the truth of what the Word of God is telling me when my senses want to tell me something else. Like, do you really believe that? Do you really, 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 really believe that? Because that's what the disciples were confronted with. They had been walking with Jesus. They saw him do all this miraculous stuff, and it was miraculous enough that it couldn't be denied. All the signs that he did, were for their senses. Okay? Because the truth of the matter is, even if he didn't do one sign, he could have just told them, look, I am God in the flesh right now. I'm the Messiah you've been waiting for. I'm here to execute a command from my Father. He could have just said it and it would have still been true. Okay? But he did all the signs that were consistent with all the prophecies that had been made concerning the Messiah. And everything he did were things that they could see, things that they could hear, things that they could feel. He even did a sign that they could taste when he took that food. They all knew they only had a few loaves and a few fish. And one account lets us know, in one of the times when he did it, the food didn't even belong to them. It was a young boy's lunch. And they all knew that there were like thousands of people, and they all watch him multiply all that food, that little bit of food, and feed all those people. They had the fish in their mouth and the bread in their mouth. And to go over the top in revealing who he is and what his provision is like, they even had leftovers. And it's like the leftovers amounted to more than they even started with. So there could be no doubt. Like, there was no way for them to be like, maybe we just imagined all of this. Maybe this was a dream. I'm not hungry anymore, but there's no evidence that really happened. There were like baskets full of leftover fragments. I think one account says there was something like 12 baskets full of leftovers out of a few fish and a couple of loaves of bread. Okay. So Jesus did a lot to let them see and feel and experience and understand that what he was saying was true. And for the past few lives, I've been talking about how they didn't understand what he was saying. For some reason, he said it outright. And we know he said it outright because it was common knowledge. Because although that wasn't part of my reading for today, I'm sure that when they make me read another one of the Gospels, I'm going to read about it because I've read it before. We know that the scribes and the Pharisees and the chief priests and the teachers in them, after Jesus, was crucified and everything, they went to the chief priests and they went to Pilate and they told him, we need to do something. Because we think that they're going to try to steal Jesus's body. Because he used to say that, after we killed him, he was going to raise from the dead. So we need to secure the tomb. And so they went to great lengths to secure the tomb. They put a guard there. And if you study the Romans and what their guard was like, they put the kind of guard there that upon pain of death, you need to guard this body. If anything happens to this body, you might as well kill yourself. Because that's the punishment. So these were some serious, effective, capable guards that they put in front of the tomb. And not only that, they put this big, heavy stone that would be really hard and really loud and difficult for you to roll away from them and to block the entrance of the tomb. And not only that, they put some kind of seal on the stone so that if you move the stone, it would break the seal and the jig would be up. Okay. So on all levels, you had to be, strong enough to get past the guard, and you'd probably have to kill them in order to get the job done. Then you'd have to find a way to move the stone, and then everybody would know you did something because the seal was broken, and it's not something that could be broken from the inside. So even after the body was gone, everybody could say you stole it. These are regular people that are walking with Jesus. These are not military men. This is not a trained militia. Jesus didn't train them to resist a guard. They were just regular people. A lot of women, it says a lot of women followed him and supported him and took care of his needs on the road. We know that the disciples were people like fishermen and a businessman, a tax collector. He's like a businessman. These are just regular people. Okay. And another thing we know is that they were scared. They were terrified. They watched the whole thing from a distance. So now they're going to come up against a Roman guard. And if the goal is to make the people think that they stole Jesus's body, it wouldn't make sense for them to get up a large group of hoodlums to do it. You know what I'm saying? Who's going to do it? Not the disciples. They were hiding. They were discouraged. They were horrified. They were scared. At the very least, they were grieving the death of a teacher that they loved and revered. And then, and on top of all of it, and this is really what stays with me, if you understand human nature, okay? They were super disappointed. Their hope was crushed. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And that is so true. Opposition can't even stop your dream. But when you stop hoping that that thing can come to pass, you're just paralyzed. Okay? Think about it. Jesus had told them all of this was going to happen, but they just couldn't get past the horror of what they saw. They couldn't get past, the shock that he would even allow himself to be arrested. And then the humiliating way with which the guards ended up treating him and at his interrogations, and how he just allowed all of that stuff to happen. And then they watch him be scourged to shreds. And then they watch him take that walk of shame with criminals to his cross that he was too weak to even carry. And then they watch the Romans crucify him, the most horrible, threw him up there naked. And people argue about, well, maybe he had a loincloth, maybe he didn't. But man, if you understand culture, no iteration would have been less than humiliating, even if he had a loincloth. If you understand that this is a culture where it's hot and people are walking around covered from head to toe, and the women even had head coverings. Okay. In a culture like that, even if they stripped you down to your underwear, it would have been utterly humiliating. Okay. But if I want to understand the culture of the Romans and how they even, they celebrated nudity, and the Olympics were run butt naked. It's not hard for me to understand. Like, in my opinion, I think he was butt naked, in my opinion. And if he was butt naked, that's even more humiliating. And they watched him allow that. The person that they were hoping was their Messiah. And if you read prophecy about the Messiah, if you read prophecy, if you read what the prophets said about the Messiah, which would have been their understanding, which would have been what they had been told by the scribes and the Pharisees and all the teachers when they would go on Shabbat and listen to the teachers teach and stuff like that, their understanding of the Messiah would have been such that they would have been expecting somebody who wouldn't have allowed something like that. I mean, there is prophecy that justifies that he would, you know, have to die and be raised again, you know, for the redemption of humanity. But it would have been a stretch for them to understand that. It's much easier for us to look back on prophecy and see, oh, here it is. It's right here. Okay. But in their case, Jesus explained it to them. He told them. Okay. But I'm pretty sure they thought maybe he's talking metaphorically. He used a lot of parables and stuff. Maybe he was just making a metaphor. Like they were still married to their expectation for how this thing was going to go down. Okay. So when they saw him naked on the cross and people were saying blasphemous things against him, you can't possibly be the Messiah. Look at you. The Messiah wouldn't allow this. If you're really the Messiah, get off that cross. You know, if your father that you talk about all the time, if he loved you so much, he would help you. No loving father would allow their son to go through what you're going through right now. You can't be who you say you are. The whole attack against him was against his identity, which is why identity is so important right now. Identity is so important. People could do anything, but you have to know who you are. But once they take away who you are and lie to you, and you believe you are who you know, something else, the jig is up. You know what I'm saying? So the whole attack was against his identity. They mocked his authority. They mocked his relationship with his father. They mocked and discredited who he said he was. They put a robe on him, you know, put a crown of thorns to torment him and make him bleed even more and humiliate him. And then they took a reed, the weakest of branches, and gave it to him, you know, to try to imply that his kingdom had no power, no authority, no capacity to do anything. And then they took that reed away from him. They smacked him and beat him and slapped him with it. And they publicly, utterly humiliated him, and he didn't stop it. And so even the disciples who had witnessed, they had seen so much evidence of his deity and so much, you know, confirmation by seeing the prophecies come alive in everything that he did. When they were looking at that, they couldn't get past their flesh, and they couldn't believe. They couldn't get past their expectations. They couldn't believe that this is Messiah. So when Jesus died and they put him in the tomb like that, I think they were utterly devastated. They were super disappointed. Their hope was completely crushed. And Jesus had done everything he could to keep that hope alive by telling them, look, you're going to see them do this to me, but don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. I'm going to rise again. And he even told them when he was going to rise again. Because we know he told them, because the scribes and the Pharisees and them told Pilate, he said he would rise on the third day. So we need to have a guard up, at least up until then. Because if they manage to steal his body and they get away with it, these people are going to revere Jesus forever. And it's going to be worse than when he was alive. We can't let that happen. Okay? So the disciples should have known. Okay? But they had no expectation because of what they saw. They decided, wow, you know, where some of them thinking, Man, we just wasted 3 years of our lives following this guy. You know, and what I think is really interesting, and I didn't say this in the last live when I was talking about, you know, Joseph of Arimathea coming and taking his body off the cross and asking for his body and laying him in his brand new tomb that nobody had ever laid in, and preparing his body because it was a preparation day. Preparation day, you know, according to their culture, on the Sabbath, you can't do any work. So the day before the Sabbath, you had to take care of everything that you think you would need to take care of on the Sabbath so that you wouldn't have to do it on the Sabbath. That includes getting the food and everything that you're going to eat on the Sabbath. Everything had to be done on the preparation day. Preparation for rest. Okay? And so that's the day Jesus died. He died on the preparation day. So they had a very short, limited amount of time to get his body off the cross, get everything cleaned up. There's a whole process of how they prepared the body, which I think is probably some kind of offshoot from their Egyptian, you know, experience and knowledge from the past or whatever. I don't know if the Romans also, you know, had these elaborate processes of preparing the body after somebody died, you know, but we know that there are oils that they use and ointments, and they wrap the body in linens and all of that. Almost like they turned him into some kind of mummy almost. Okay. And so it's an elaborate process. And Joseph of Arimathea, and in one account, we find out that Nicodemus was also there helping him. So Nicodemus comes out of the of hiding now too. Because remember, he was the Pharisee that met Jesus secretly in the night. Because the Pharisees made it clear, if you talk to him, if you believe anything that he says, you're getting excommunicated from the temple. And so if you're, you know, a notable Pharisee who had given your life to it, and you really sincerely were devoted to the law and everything, and you wanted to hear Jesus, you had to do it in hiding, or else you'd be excommunicated. But at this point, once Jesus is dead, Nicodemus comes out. He's like, I don't care. You know, he comes out, and his devotion is made clear. Okay. And so the two of them are doing their best to get this thing together, and who knows how much they know about doing that stuff. Okay. And it says that the women are watching from far away. They're watching from a distance, just seeing everything that they're doing, and they're thinking to themselves, we can't take care of this now. There's not enough time. But we'll come back later and take care of this thing and properly take care of his body for death. So nobody is thinking about the fact that he said he would rise again. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, they were preparing his body for death. Nicodemus even gave up, not Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea even gave up his tomb, a resting place for Jesus. So nobody was thinking he's going to come back to life again, because that would have been a stretch. They saw him raise Lazarus from the dead, but he raised Lazarus from the dead. And Jesus was dead. He was so dead that when the soldiers came to make sure everybody was dead, because the time was wrapping up, you know, remember, Passover was about to go down, and they wanted everything cleaned up. You know what I'm saying? And they said when they came to Jesus, he was already dead. So a soldier knows when somebody's dead. They examined him, and they saw that he was already dead. They even took a spear and stuck it through his side, and it says blood and water came out. Okay? They took him off the cross. They didn't break his legs to hasten his death, because he was already dead. He was dead, super dead. He was really actually dead. Okay? And nobody was expecting him to come alive. You know, the only people that came close to remembering what he said and considering a possibility that anything could go down were the scribes and the Pharisees in them, which is super ironic. After everything Jesus had done and gone through, none of the disciples were sitting there thinking there's a possibility he might rise. But wait a minute, he might rise. He did say he's going to rise. He might rise. Nobody was thinking that. And when Mary and the other Mary and them go to the tomb, they were going to clean up the rush job that Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus did to prepare the body so that Jesus could rest in a dignified way. Had nothing to do with him being resurrected. Okay? That's the most compelling thing of all about this whole story. It lends to the authenticity of the situation, because that's exactly how that thing would have gone down. Even the people that believed it in a skeptical, twisted way. They didn't believe and hope Jesus would rise from the dead. They didn't say, oh no, he might rise from the dead, so we need to put a guard in front of there. No, they said, he's dead. They might try to steal his body, so we need to put a guard in front of there. But at least they remembered what he said. The people that knew him, walked with him, loved him. Okay? At that point, their hope was so crushed that, man, there's no way this could be the Messiah. Wow. So we still have to wait for Messiah to come. Okay? And the fact that despite all of their grief and despite the sheer magnitude of what had happened, everybody meticulously followed the Sabbath rules and regulations, even to the extent of rushing to prepare Jesus's body because they didn't want to break the law. I think another thing that for me, what that reveals to me is that Jesus had been the only one kind of resisting some of the interpretations that the scribes and the Pharisees and them had of the law. He frequently healed on the Sabbath. He let them feed themselves on the Sabbath, walking through the fields and stuff. He challenged the way they interpreted Sabbath rest all the time. He was the only one that was doing that, as an upright citizen. I'm not saying all criminals honored everything and rebellious people. I'm talking about somebody who's claiming to walk with God and walk in obedience to God and be righteous. He's the only one that was really, bucking the system. For them to see him allow himself to be killed would have another fear would have arisen that, we really need to toe the line or we'll be next. Okay. So none of this is a setup for people that are expecting Jesus to rise from the dead. Okay. And for me, that's super authentic and real. Okay. It's so authentic and real that I'm sitting here with my Bible, meditating on the fact that right now we have this word. We have this revelation about who we are and what reality is. It's been told to us plainly. It's very plain from Genesis to Revelation. Okay. But even if you take it by parts and you study it by parts, even if you take the book of Ephesians, which plainly tells us what Jesus has done for us and what condition we are in right now and what's ours to possess and how we can flow right now. It's been plainly told to us. What am I missing? What level of victory am I living in? And as I sit here looking at these disciples, I'm like, the more things change, the more things stay the same is what I'm thinking about. And I'm, and I'm like, Holy Spirit, help me not to miss it. Help me not to miss it. Help me to read this word with understanding. Help me that if I say I believe these things, that I live these things and I walk these things out. And I don't allow what my senses are telling me to deny the truth of who you say I am and what you say my condition is, where you say I can go, and what you expect me to do. But most of all, who I am in you. Help me, Father. Help me. And for even more evidence that they really didn't know, they really didn't expect it. You know, the minute the Sabbath was over and it was legally okay for Mary and them, it says Mary and the other Mary, and you know, it was like a group of the women that had always taken care of Jesus. So now they're going to take care of him till the end. That's their mentality. You know, and in a situation like that, you want to do something. You need to do something. Sometimes it helps to do something against the pain rather than to sit there and just drown in the pain and the disappointment and the sheer horror of what's just happened. You know, it would have been one thing if he just died, but for him to die like that, you know, in their culture, only people that are cursed die like that. And for Jesus to allow himself to be killed like that, he was actually accepting the curse unto himself, which is exactly what he came to do. That was the whole point. And he told them that, but they just didn't get it. You know what I'm saying? But they would have been sitting there completely hopeless. Not only isn't he the Messiah, but he's cursed. He was cursed. He was cursed, okay? And I'm sure those people had the same mentality that them people back when everything happened to Job back in the Old Testament had. Well, you know, what happened to him was so terrible. Surely there must have been something bad about him that we didn't know about, because clearly this is judgment from God. We still think that way now. Don't let something terrible happen to a believer. Never mind that we're in a war where our adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a raging lion looking to see who he can devour. Never mind that, and that he actively attacks believers. When something bad and terrible happens, the assumption is it was God. Just like back in the day with Job, Satan did all that stuff to Job, but the assumption was God did it. And it's the same today. Wow, must have not loved God the way they said they did. Must have been some sin in their life. Must have been some sin in their ancestry. They must be cursed. There must be some kind of generational curse. I mean, we come up with all this stuff, everything but what it is. We are in a war. There is a spiritual battle of horrific proportions going on right now. When you're locked in your carnal senses, it's easy for you to ignore it and come to dumb conclusions about why everything seems to be headed downhill with the government, with people's faith, with even people's perception about who they are. That's happening to us right now. And we're silly enough not to understand that Satan is behind the whole thing. And instead, we're pitting up against each other. And I feel like he's just like sitting back like, yes, 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 yes. This is exactly what I want. You know what I'm saying? So they weren't expecting it. So these women, the minute the Sabbath was over, they were going to the tomb so that they could make Jesus as clean and neat and perfect as possible, you know, as a corpse. Okay. And I read today, I had to read Matthew, the last chapter of Matthew. Is it Matthew 25? I had to read Matthew 28, verses 1 through 10, and John 20, verses 3 to 18. And both of them are the accounts of how the women come upon a resurrected Jesus. And Peter and John come upon the empty tomb. Okay? Clearly, they're not the ones that took the body. Okay? Because both of them go to the tomb expecting the body to be there. The Marys, they go expecting the body to be there, and whatever other people were with them, because different accounts say different amounts of people. Okay? And if you put them all side by side, some vague picture gets presented to us that they were going to the tomb expecting the dead body to be there. And the women were even talking about, we have everything we need to clean up his body and everything, but who's going to roll the stone away from us? How are we going to get through the guards to push the stone away so that we could even get in the tomb to do this? That's what they were talking about on the way. So nobody was expecting the stone to be rolled away and for the body to be gone, even though it was the third day when Jesus said he would rise. So they get there, and one account says the earth shook. They felt some kind of an earthquake because the angel pushed the heavy stone away from the mouth of the tomb. And one account says the angel sat there on the stone. And when the women got there, they saw the angel, and the angel told them that Jesus wasn't there anymore, that they knew they were coming to deal with Jesus, but he wasn't there anymore. He's alive now. He has gotten up. He is risen. And they told them, go tell the disciples that this has happened, and that Jesus will meet them in Galilee the same way he told them he would meet them in Galilee. And in one of the lives, I read that verse where he said, after this, I'm going to die, then I'm going to rise again, and I'll meet you in Galilee. You guys, appreciate the implications of this. They were looking, touching, feeling, walking with, seeing everything Jesus did. And they knew what he said. They still didn't get it. You know, that's why Jesus says it's more blessed. We're more blessed because we haven't seen, heard, touched, him at all, but yet we believe. Okay, so appreciate what it takes to get your senses in line to walk in true reality. It's just not going to happen by going to church once a week, or worse yet, catching it on online, doing some kind of stream session and hearing some kind of inspirational message that makes you feel good, or going to some kind of church and having, coffee and bagels and fellowshipping with people, and then hearing an inspirational message, and then you go home and go about your business chasing the American dream with all your heart all week long. And every once in a while, you'll look at a verse, or a verse will pop up on your phone, or maybe you're diligent and for 20 minutes every day, you make sure you look at some small passage, but your focus is on chasing the American dream and, doing the best that you can to get the best that you can out of this life. And if you have kids, helping your kids to get there. And if you're married, supporting your husband through that, or if you're single, hoping you'll find a husband so that you'll have a good life here, and I don't say that with any kind of mockery, because I've done it. I've been there. I was doing exactly that, and maybe a little bit more because I actually enjoyed studying the word and I love history, and maybe I spent a little bit more time than your average person. But at the end of the day, for all the impact that revelation had on my life, it wasn't until COVID that I was like, it needs to be more for me than to know about it, like I'm reading history. This power has to work in my life, or I'm not going to follow it. I'm going to have the courage to pick one or the other. Either I'm all the way in and all of it works, or I'm not following it because none of it works. I'm not doing this thing anymore where I'm like, it works sometimes and some of it doesn't work, but I'm too afraid to just be out there with nothing. So I'm just going to follow it. I'm a Christian, but I don't really believe any of this stuff is going to have any impact in my life whatsoever. All my hope are on natural things. All my hope is on natural things. Whatever trouble I'm in or whatever things I need, everything I need, I'm getting through natural means. Things that make sense to my natural senses and my carnality. Because even though I want these spiritual truths to be true, I haven't really experienced them to be true. Okay? So it's almost like a pie in the sky in the sweet by and by. When I get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be type of religion that I'm living and walking out. But it doesn't have any power to meet me where I am today. It has no impact on my finances. It has no impact on my health. It has no impact on my emotional state. It has no impact on my identity. It doesn't really work. I want it to work, but it doesn't really work. I don't know where else to go, so I'm just going to be here. And I serve a God who could, but will he? Will he do it for me? Y'all, that's not enough for me. It's really not enough for me. Because during COVID, what I came to understand is if we don't have the real thing, we still don't have anything. I felt like I was out there butt naked. And honestly, you are out there butt naked if you don't have the real thing. Either it's real or it's not real. But if it's real, treat it like it's real. Treat it like it's real. Treat it like it's the most important thing. Let it be your focus. You know, I still gotta go out there and, you know, do the natural things that are necessary because I am in this life. You know what I'm saying? I need to eat. I need a place to stay. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying, you know, I'm gonna lock myself up in a room with my Bible and just read it 24/7 and not deal with my husband and my kids and my home and the other responsibilities that I have. But everything I do is through an eternal lens. My kids, they must be discipled. My friends, I must interact with them through the truth of this gospel and with the principles of what God says. This gospel, I'm out here making sure as I'm getting it, I'm sharing it. And I'm trying to possess everything it says I should possess. Otherwise, we're missing it just like the disciples, okay? Because they get to the tomb, an angel is sitting there, an angel has pushed the rock away. One account says he's, you know, some of them saw the angel sitting on the rock and the angel told them, Jesus isn't here. Go tell my brothers that I've risen and I'm going to meet them in Galilee, just like I said. Another account says Mary gets to the tomb. She sees that the stone's already rolled away. She comes to the conclusion, oh no, somebody rolled the stone away and stole Jesus's body. She doesn't think, he's risen just like he said. She doesn't think that. She thinks, oh no, somebody stole his body. And she's weeping and crying. Oh no, what are we going to do now? What have they done to his body? What are they going to do to his body? Are they going to take his dead body and add insult to injury and desecrate his body? And if they've taken his body, where can we go to memorialize him hereafter? I believe these are the kind of thoughts that are roaming through her mind. And she's beside herself weeping. She's so beside herself weeping. You know, she runs back. One account says she runs back and tells Peter and the disciples, you know, the stone's been rolled away. The body's not there. Somebody stole his body. And it says Peter and John take off running to see if this is true. And when they get to the tomb, it says Peter runs in there first. And it says John makes it there first, but he hesitates to go in. But Peter runs past him and makes it in there first. Whatever Peter sees convinces him that, oh, nobody stole his body. He's risen. Okay. John goes in and he looks in, and whatever he sees, he also comes to the conclusion, Jesus is risen. That's when they believe it. That's when they begin to realize that, wait a minute, he rose like he said he was going to rise. At that point, when they see with their own eyes, they see what happened in the tomb. Okay. And so they go, they leave. And Mary is there. One account says Mary's there. Mary Magdalene specifically is there, and she's weeping. She's beside, I guess nobody stopped to explain anything to her. She's weeping. She's beside herself. And one account says she finally looks in the tomb. And she says that she sees one angel standing at the head of where Jesus was laying, and the other angel standing at the foot of where Jesus was laying. And she's just weeping and weeping and weeping. And they tell her, why are you weeping? And she goes, I'm weeping because, let me read it to y'all. Because I can remember it, but let me read it to y'all. I think the one I'm talking about is John's account. John chapter 20. Gotta love John. John chapter 20. John chapter 20, verse 3 to 18, but I already told you a lot of it, so I'm just going to jump to, let me start from 3. It says, Peter therefore went out. Okay, no, let me start from 1. Now, the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. Then she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciples whom Jesus loved and said to them, they have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him. Peter therefore went out and the other disciple and were going to the tomb, so they both ran together. And the other disciple outran Peter and came to the tomb first. And he, stooping down and looking in, saw the linen cloths lying there, yet he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen cloths lying there, and the handkerchief that had been around his head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded together in a place by itself. So, y'all, if somebody comes to rob a tomb, ain't nobody folding stuff and putting stuff back neatly and all this stuff. They did not see a chaotic picture when they looked in this tomb. Okay. But there's even more implications. I've read people's commentaries on even the way it was folded. According to their culture, Jesus was communicating something to anyone who looked in and saw that he was risen. Okay, but let's go on in verse 3. It says, then the other disciple who came to the tomb first went in also, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not know the scripture that he must rise again from the dead. Then the disciples went away again to their home. But Mary stood outside by the tomb weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the tomb, and she saw 2 angels in white sitting, one at the head and the other at the feet where the body of Jesus had laid. Then they said to her, woman, why are you weeping? She said to them, because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him. Now when she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there and did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking? She, supposing him to be the gardener, said to him, sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away. So she had no concept that she's even talking to Jesus, who is now alive, because she's beside herself. She's weeping. She's crying. Can she even see? And in her mind, she has this rhetoric going on about what's going on and what's going down and what are we going to do? And oh no, oh no, oh no. She can't even hear what anybody is saying. She can't even comprehend what she's looking at. Okay? And then it goes on to say that in verse 16, Jesus said to her, Mary. I'm sorry to yell, y'all. But that's how I'm reading it. Through all the noise that's going on in her mind, that's going on with her emotions, that's going on with her senses, that's going on with her understanding and her expectations and how she sees things, the only thing that cuts through that, not even her eyes can cut through it. The only thing that cuts through that, I am the good shepherd, and my sheep, they know my voice. They hear my voice. And another voice they will not follow. So when Jesus goes, Mary, it cuts through everything. And it's the same for me today. His voice will cut through everything. It will cut through my senses. It will cut through my understanding. It will cut through my expectation. And I will know who he is, and I will recognize him. In every circumstance I need to recognize him in. Okay? She turned and said to him, Rabboni, which is to say teacher. Jesus said to her, she must have thrown herself on him, because then it says, Jesus said to her, do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren. And I read that, my brothers. Go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. He's like, this is the new state of things. Because up until then, he was always talking about my Father, my Father, my Father. I know my Father. I'm the only one that knows my Father. I'm here to reveal my Father to you. I came from my Father, and I only do what I've seen my Father do, and I only say what my Father told me to say. And my Father, my Father, my Father, my Father. He dies, and it takes the curse of the world, upon himself, takes the judgment of the world upon himself, and is resurrected, which is proof, which is the ultimate sign that everything he had said about himself was true, and that the Father has backed him up, because only God could raise him up. And now he's saying this changes everything. Now my Father is your Father. Now my God is truly your God. The way I know him, you can know him. The way I'm one with him, you can be one with him. And this is all true. Read it. He said it would happen. Prophecy said it would happen. And God gave Paul the full revelation. Ephesians, Colossians, Romans, both of the Corinthians, Galatians, Philippians. Read it. That's the revelation of who we are now. Are you missing something in the way you're living because you don't know who you are and what Jesus really did? He didn't just die so that you won't go to hell and you'll have eternal life in the sweet by and by. He died to restore your relationship with the Father right now. And if your relationship with the Father is restored, and now he's your Father, and Jesus promises the same signs that I'm doing right now and even greater are going to be manifested in the people that believe in me right now. Are you missing something in the way you're living and allowing life to completely crush you and devastate you? You don't have to. That's what this word is saying. You don't have to. Wow. In verse 18, it says, Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord and that he had spoken these things to her. It's powerful, y'all. It's powerful. It's powerful. It's powerful. You know, and it doesn't escape me. It doesn't escape me that the Lord saw her. It doesn't say Peter at this time, Peter and John don't see Jesus yet. They don't see him yet. Mary's the first one who gets to see him. She gets to hold him, touch him. She's the first one. And y'all think he doesn't reveal himself to women? She's the first one that he put a message in her mouth and told her to go and tell them, his brothers. She's a woman. And y'all think the Bible denigrates women? Read it from cover to cover, y'all. See and understand how God sees women, how God values women. We were even given the task of bringing forth the Messiah. The Holy Spirit overshadowed a woman. And God in the flesh came through a woman. Stop believing the lies of Satan that the only glory that there is for women is through this feminist lie that he's putting out there. You were never devalued. Sinful people devalued you. God never devalued you. And has used women repeatedly and has given us a position of great honor, great value, great dignity. I mean, when I saw that for the first time, it was a wrap for me. Whatever you say, God, this is exactly who I want to be. It's powerful. Don't make the mistake of assuming that the negative things that Satan has done, that's stuff that God's doing, because nothing can happen that's outside of his will. You think it's his will for people to reject him? We have our own free will to do the wrong thing. So anyway, you guys, I could go on and on and on and on and on and on, you guys. I really can. I really can. This is just burning in me right now. It's just burning in me. So powerful. Lord, please. I just pray that you would just really help us to possess everything you have for us, and help us to possess everything you died to give us. Help us to possess the victory of your resurrection, and to walk out everything you've purposed for us to walk out. And help us to stand for the truth of what you said, no matter what our senses tell us. Thank you, 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 Father. Thank you for loving the world so much that you have done this. Thank you for never wavering in your love. You never wavered in your love. Thank you. Thank you for being faithful. Thank you for being true. Thank you that when I'm not faithful, you're faithful. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. I'm looking at this chat. Coleman Pagey says, hey, Coleman. All right, you guys, that's all I have for you. Have a blessed day, and I will see you in the next live. Be blessed.